my educator, let me welcome you to Strategy Sunday. Indeed, we are in the month of Marvelous Me. And yes, we're closing out Marvelous Me. And we are using the suggestions that you would have given to us using the Google form as to the content that we can cover over the month. Today, we're going to be looking at writing across curriculum. How do we actionize this term, and what does this term entails? And so, writing across the curriculum, also referred to as WAC, is a movement designed to ensure that students have frequent and significant opportunities to write, revise, and discuss their writing in their classes. The basic philosophy behind writing across curriculum is that students will learn more and will become better thinkers and communicators if they write consistently and repeatedly throughout their courses, or we could say throughout school. Now, we know that within our system, within our setting, based on our context, we have different challenges, and we know that students tend not to read as much as they should, and they tend not to write as much as they should. And so we're going to be looking at how it is that we can integrate writing across curriculum. What are the best practices that can be shared? And so the best practices of writing across curriculum: one, writing and thinking are intricately connected processes. Frequent and varied writing helps students learn. So you have to give them a variety of writing, a variety of prompts to get them to write and to be able to express themselves. Students learn that writing about a topic is a mode of learning about it. So when you give them a research, an assignment, a homework that they should read and then write or summarize, this is a way in which it will help them to learn. Best practices also include increased reading and writing in both length and frequency, improve higher order learning. So the more you give them, you may give them a particular paragraph to write. Tomorrow it may be 2 or 3, or as you progress, you keep improving, you keep adding, right? And the frequency too in which they write, it will help them to improve their higher order learning. Another best practice that we're going to be looking at is revision. What revision does is improves student writing, increases self-assessment, and develops greater subject understanding. So when you revise with them, you help them, right, to increase their self-assessment, to be able to write a better and to develop greater subject understanding. There's also peer review activities which help clarify writing processes, promote collaborative learning, right? And also, and in turn, what it does is to improve students' ability to evaluate their own writing. So they're sitting with their peers and they're reviewing what was written, what were the prompts that were given, did they answer it correctly, what could they have done to clarify or to improve on this or to make it clearer to the reader. And so when you do the peer review activities, it will help the students to improve on their learning. They will be able to learn from each other and collaborate as they do so, because we do know we have students who are better readers, better writers, and so by collaborating they'll be able to learn from each other. So we're going to be looking at in-class writing. So we're breaking this out now to look at how can you within the class help the students to write across curriculum. And remember, when we write across curriculum, this is something that the English teacher does, this is something that the geography teacher does, this is something that the social studies, so each teacher is implementing these strategies. So when you implement these, what it will do is to gear the students to become better writers right across the curriculum, across each subject. They'll be able to write better. And so, one, regularly assign brief free writing activities. Example, for the end of a class, you may ask them to write about a major point that they learned that day and one lingering question that they may have, similarly to journaling. Also, you can use writing to generate discussion. So prior to a class discussion, ask students to write a brief summary or response on the subject or reading. So you may have given them something to read, or you prior to class or in class you gave them something to read briefly before you go into the content. You ask them to write, and then that will be able, now the students will then share with each other, and by sharing with each other, they develop a space where writing is expected and promotes discussion. So based on what was written, someone is able to discuss it, somebody is able to expound on it, someone is able to share. And so they're able now to clarify within their minds and to understand what is required. And it helps them to become better writers and readers too. Also, you can use readings as opportunities to teach writing and examples of disciplinary genres. So you may want to give them these readings for them to read, and then it also teaches them how to write. You write in different disciplines. You can also unpack readings as examples of writing in addition to channels of content, especially when they can serve as samples of writing within the discipline. So you want to give them as much readings as possible, and then you allow them to be able to write. And what this does is to channel the content that you're giving to them. It is paired or aligned to that, so it helps them to understand where you're going, what you're doing, and how they can better develop and understand, because they are now able to write in class and to learn from others. The second strategy, apart from in-class writing, is writing assignments or homework. So what could possibly be done is that you can assign low and high stakes writing assignments. When we talk about low, it is just simple, something simple. So like maybe a prompt based on a topic. You may ask them to make a chart to explain. They may use sentences or keywords, right, to explain something. And then the high stakes now is where they must synthesize complex information. So they may read something and to summarize it into 3 main points or 2 main points, or you may send them to research and to bring back that information by writing it. Additionally, you can also use the peer review, and peer review is an excellent way to build students. You give students opportunities to learn from one another, develop a collaborative environment, and clarify assignment goals. Also helps crowdsource feedback to balance time efficiently. So instead of the teacher doing everyone in a class session or 2 class sessions, this is where you pair the stronger with the weaker, and they're able to assist them as they do the review. You can also assign active or close reading of a complex text, in which students engage the reading by writing analytically about it as they read. This promotes better reading practices and improves student understanding. There's also another way to do it, is to include metacognitive elements within written assignments, such as asking students to examine and explain what they've learned and how. Studies in learning process have found that metacognitive writing helps students to learn complex skills and self-assessment. So you want to implement these as you look at writing assignments or homework. The next way in which we can implement writing across curriculum to strengthen students is to design effective writing assignments. So don't just send the child to read chapter 1 and to summarize it. You must be deliberate in what you require from them. So you're to read chapter 1. Here are the prompts that you are going to respond to. This is what is going to guide you to answer or to summarize. So you give them an outline as to what is expected. Consider what's most important, what you want students to learn from the assignment, because sometimes we send them to read chapter 1 and chapter 2, but then it's just a main element that you want them to get, not the entire chapter. You just want them to get the most important piece, and so you have to help them to do that. Explicitly define the assignment's goals. Make distinctions between writing and subject matter criteria. What is expected of them? Ensure that the assignment addresses a clear learning or course objective. So it's not just for them to go and write, but how does this match back to the syllabus? How does this match back to the general objectives or the specific objectives of your lesson? Include details about formatting and submission requirements, double spaced, Times New Roman, um, 2 paragraphs, submit using legal size, page or letter size, what is required of them, what should the front page look like, all of that, right? Then you also want to anticipate and review common mistakes in addition to what is expected. So you want to tell them ahead of time. I know some of you will come and you will share this, but this is not what I want. This is what is required. Because as an educator, you would have given a similar assignment before. So you know what are some of the common mistakes. You want to point those out to the students so that they don't make the same mistakes. You also want to provide samples or review in class of successful student work, and this is something that is excellent. You must have samples of your students' work, so when it gets to a particular topic, you're able to show the students what was done before, so they can do it, they can understand, and they can know that it is not out of their reach. If you're using a rubric in the assessment, you provide rubric to students ahead of time. Educators, I hate to see when students get a project or get something to do, and it is when they submit it, that is when the teacher is writing out at the back for neatness, presentation, content. The students must know this ahead of time so that they're able to gear themselves, right? And then after grading assignments, review and revise the prompt to address pattern confusion or mistakes. After you grade, you want to revise with them, to go through, to show them where they went wrong, what they could have done better, and so on, and provide examples of other students who did it well, so that those who did not do it as well as they should, they would learn from it. There's also revision. So what can be done here, and this is similar to mastery learning, the students learn by mastering the content or mastering the assignment. So it should not be just a one-hit wonder for the students. I've always said to educators, you are the content leader in your classroom. You must provide opportunities for the students to master the task at hand. Yes, there are going to be times, for example, when you're doing a test, that you're not going to send them and say, oh, this is incorrect, correct it. No, but when you give them a project, when you give them something, allow them to be able to score more than once, unless it is that you would have gone through thoroughly with them, show them the examples and so on, so they know exactly what is expected then. But as educators, this is something that we need to really look a little bit closer at, providing more than one ways in which the students can get better grades. So you assign multiple drafts of majoring assignments and scaffold assignments. Explicitly value revision in discussion, assessment, and course course credit. Make a distinction between the processes of editing, proofreading, and revising content. Use peer review in class or online to facilitate the revision process. So you want to ensure that you are clearly providing an avenue in which the students can revise through discussion, assessment, and so on to get better grades. And then we have assigning peer review. What do we do? And we have heard the term peer review so many times since we have been looking at writing across curriculum, because really the idea of peer review, or of having peer in class, the peer process is to strengthen weaker students. So the stronger students strengthen the weaker students, and that is what helps them to learn and to grasp and to be a better version of themselves. So you want to utilize peer review frequently for medium and high stakes assignments, not the low ones that you just ask them to write 2 sentences on the topic or so on. But when you ask them to synthesize information, to research, you want to allow peer review. Integrate peer review as a step in the revision process. Use both short and long peer review sessions. So you can have a 10 to 15 minutes or the class session. That's good. Assign peer review in class and or online via forum. So there are different ways in which you can allow them. It could be in class, or if you're using the hybrid approach. And then If using a rubric, ask students to use the rubric to guide their peer review. So the rubric now will guide the peer when they're looking at the work, their peers' work. They'll be able to say, okay, I'll give you 4 out of 6 because you did not do this, or so on, and that will help to gauge them, right? Responding to student writing is one of the final approaches that we can look at when we do writing across curriculum. You want to ensure that when the students give you the work, educators, you are responding to it. You are showing them what they have done wrong. You have marked the work and provide them with the feedback, right? So provide feedback in ways that are responsive to the assignment description. Focus feedback on what matters most in ways that are responsive to learning objectives. Utilize rubrics and written feedback. Use time effectively. Focus written feedback on unique achievements or areas needing development. Review common or patterned achievement or areas needing development in class. And then finally, I'm just going to share with you a few strategies that you can use in your class as teaching strategies. There's a think, pair, share. So the students will think about what you have given to them, then they're going to write, then they pair, right, in twos, and then they share. There's a rally writing table where you give them time to think, then in pairs they could work together, and then they write and pass it around, and it comes to the teacher, and teacher will be able to read it through. And then there is recap writing. Now for the recap writing is where you go to class, and at the beginning of each row you give the students a blank sheet of paper, and you ask them to write as fast as they can one thing that they remember, and the paper keeps going down in the row and up, down and up, until you would have said time. And when you say time, they share what is there. And then you have peer review writing, which we spoke about earlier. The students would complete an assignment and you ask the peer to review it before submitting. And then there's also journal writing, to which I alluded earlier, that in class you can ask them to write about what is it that they learned and what is a question that they really want to ask. This will help them to write properly and to be able to express themselves. You want to increase the frequency at which the students write. Some teachers provide little or no opportunity for the students to write, or the opportunity that they provide for them is to write from the board or write from the projector, the projected screen, right? But there's no much activity, there's no much integration for them to just give them a prompt and allow them to sit and write. The more, as it says, practice makes perfect. The more they write, the more they participate in writing, the frequency at which they do, and reading, it helps them to develop better. I want to thank you so much, educators, for listening in to Writing Across Curriculum, and I trust that the educator that would have recommended that we look at this topic, that you have learned somewhat from it and you're able to utilize it as you go forward. Please share the link, please like and subscribe, and as always, I wish for you the very best. Educators, I just want to remind you that in your jobs you are replaceable, but in your family you are not replaceable. And so whatever you do, you are to work smarter and not harder. Right? Teaching is one such job in which you can research, you can find samples, templates, research, download, contextualize, and utilize. Do not make your work more difficult than it should really be. Have a great week ahead. Thank you, and God bless you.